on track. Yeah, so we're gonna start the meeting at 1:05, 4. Are there any adjustments to the agenda, Joan? Conflict of interest disclosure, we usually just pass through that unless there's something that's on our agenda that you need to, yeah. I don't believe we have the March 14th minutes, so we're gonna skip over that.
Okay.
No public is here to speak, any correspondence? Alright. So why don't I start with, before we go right into old business, since Beth is back at it and ready to go. Where we are in the process of things right now is obviously the town is going through their budgeting stage, and we'll have a June vote on that budget. But our organization, our committee, has been put in place as part of the comp plan that was done 2012, so 10 years ago now. And that comp plan highly recommended that the town, the Chamber of Commerce, and a new committee called the Rangeley Economic Opportunity Committee was formed to work together to help promote the town and the projects in the town and get things that are in this comp plan accomplished, right? So those were some of those things. It was probably about a year or two after that that we really started getting formed. And we've been really going through the comp plan and saying, what are our objectives? What are our goals? Now, we're an advisory committee. We don't have any voting. We can't say we're gonna spend money on this or that. We can just advise the select board as to what we, are working on, what we wanna be working on. We ask the select board for their input to make sure that we're not wasting our time working on a project that they're totally against, or, we're so far down priority. Some of the things that came out of this was, how do we get grants? Because we knew money always is an issue. So we wanted to make sure we were positioned the best for Rangeley to be able to take the opportunity to get grants. We did get a grant, we did get money for a downtown plan. We did a downtown revitalization plan because our old plan was done but never implemented. So then we went and did it again, and we've gone through that plan, and we're kind of going through it piece by piece to say, what are the pieces that need to be implemented? One of the pieces was a TIF district, creating a downtown TIF district, which is a tax incremental financing, something like that. Thing where basically it can work in a couple of different directions. You take a snapshot of your community, and then that's the tax that you pay your county taxes on. And then the improvements that people do to their properties and their downtown things, when that increases, that goes into a bucket for the town to use. The difference between what it was and what it is now, that money goes into the bucket for economic development. It can also be used where you say, I want to bring in a furniture manufacturer in the industrial zone, and he can bring in 20 employees, and we want to give him a break on his taxes, so we won't charge him the full amount of their tax. Am I saying that properly?
It's almost like a certain term in a loan.
Yeah.
Like that you're I would say gifting them.
Yeah.
For a period of time. It doesn't last forever, but it's just so if someone gets started out. I mean, that's what our goal is, just to give someone a tax anticipation break until, like, one of the guys that if I have this one property and I put like, what did it say? 20 houses on this property. So rather than you taxing me individually and my tax bill is like 100 some odd thousand, that you'll give us some kind of credit towards that.
So that is in place. The rules are being written about that now. And as part of the Economic Development Committee, Laura, I know, and I had this conversation with Joe, that we would like to be part of that loop with your policies, just to make sure. There's other things that this money can be used for. So it's all downtown economic stuff. But it could be like, because we have growth in the town, we need to increase our sewer. So it could go to sewer, it could go to some
go to
other things.
projects, yeah.
And we just wanna make sure that we understand the process of making those decisions and what that money is. That money builds over time, it doesn't start off with anything in it, like right now, there's nothing in that bucket.
Right.
But there will be this year, and it'll keep building, and then
And it's
you
only
have a certain amount of time to use it too, right? So you
Right.
gotta use it.
It's a 30-year program.
Right.
30 years, beginning. Yeah.
So there's nothing that's gonna be taxed, so the taxpayers have a heavier burden. It's going to be like any of the improvements that were done. And we picked like a huge section of like, so any of the improvements that weren't done before last April for Marble Station, those buildings will be in that. Is that correct? Once they get the occupancy.
Back to 19, yeah.
Right.
So let's say
Oh,
like
that's
Lauren
right.
Paul
Yeah.
bought a lot, they were taxed on a $60,000 land lot, and now they're taxed on a $500,000, property. That money differential between the 60 tax dollars and they still get taxed, that amount of money.
Right, but the
Still comes to
difference is-
Rangeley, it just doesn't go into
The
the,
budget part.
in the budget, operating budget, it goes
Right.
into this other bucket. But it doesn't get taxed at the county level. So the county can't tax us on that additional, tax dollar amount, so it's a good thing.
Yeah.
The other thing is, it's a good thing for, a lot of these grants that we have gone for have been for, you need to have a downtown plan, you need to have a comp plan. Having a TIF district is very important, there's different things that they look for, and it checks off those buckets. We did get a grant, we identified that working as a community is better than working individually, because everybody's working individually on all these different projects, and doesn't mean anybody's getting it done, they burn out. So we've been working collectively with different organizations. So we worked with Rangeley Health and Wellness and Rangeley Lakes Heritage Trust on some grants that did that. Remember the Community Destination Academy?
Yes.
Well, we got money from that, that's where the signs came from, the
Yes.
ones, the aquatic signs, that was one of the projects. There's a dark sky project that's part of that. We were able to pay for somebody who's writing our whole, rules on that and getting us certified as a dark sky community. So those things all lead to each other, where we didn't have to go ask taxpayers for money to do these things. So for instance, on that wayfinding signage thing, the Greenville project was like a $300,000 project. We did it for $9,000. And that was even work in kind versus cash outlay. So
And they will come
Volunteers
days
and
and count.
volunteers, and it was,
Employees working on it.
yeah,
So those signs cost the town of Rangeley $9,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You guys did a great job.
and and there's 4 more going up this spring that are going out by Phillips, like farther out, not in town. And then there's a phase 2 on this. And there's more money from the scenic byways to go to a lot of that. One of the downtown plan recommendations, parking, as you know, was one of them, which was moving parking to reconfiguring the way we park from diagonal to parallel, so we have more space so in the future, for a couple of reasons, the biggest one was safety, coming up over, and then being able to see the storefronts, because you were really usually trying to avoid the truck that was parked too far out. And then also because the sidewalks were identified as areas that needed improvement. And also what was identified was the desire for the town, and the public said this, that they wanted the power lines buried and a cleaned up line. So some of the things we did were like the flowers and the garbage cans and all that stuff.
Love that, yes.
That's like the easy stuff, and then the hard stuff is the sidewalks and what we can do with those power lines to make them not so intrusive, and in the middle of our sidewalks. Now, half the time they're in the middle of the sidewalk. We had to redo our crosswalks too when we did the downtown parking, and that enabled us to have ADA compliant side crosswalks, which we didn't. And it also made them, so some of the crosswalks, I never noticed this in my entire life, but by your road, like the crosswalk ended in the middle of the road, it didn't go to the sidewalk. So the painted sidewalk, the crosswalk of town was wrong, and it was too much of a pitch for, things like that, so. The grant we got for the sidewalk that went up to the overlook, and then there was also sidewalk work done prior to that, that was down by the builders. Yeah, so those two sections are done, and now it's like, okay, let's look at the middle section and we tie that all in. Because one of the things that came across from everybody in town is they wanted a walkable town, safe town. They wanted the days where you would park, we talked about this in the old days when the IGA was like the center of the town. You would park and you would walk all the way up and down, you couldn't park right in front, so you would park at Riddles and you'd go to the pharmacy and then you'd walk to the thing and you'd hit all the stores and you'd go to the movie theater and you'd go down to the Frosty and, people walked it instead of parking and then getting in their car and parking. Same thing with Aquasic. Aquasic is not a walkable town, even though it's a little town, but it's got that 17 and 4 right in the middle. There's no sidewalks, there's no things. We were trying to look at ways to make that a more cohesive, I guess, town and safer. Because right now it's kind of really hairy in the summer when you're sitting out there across the grocery and the little kids running to the park across the street and the cars can't see and they're, so there's some work being done there. So Joe's been working with the DOT on that. And that's part of our next bigger project. Broadband obviously was the biggest too, and we got a grant for that. And that should be starting this fall, we also have been working to make sure that the community is working as a community and not just the town, that we all have skin in the game, so the plantations as well, that they've been involved.
And I think it's worked out better by having the plantations be a part of the committee, because if something, and you wanna fight and wanna raise money for something, they're actually taxpayers that are saying, hey, yeah, we're part of this group and we're all pulling together, so, which is what we really need to do.
So, I might have just been too long on that, but I just wanted
love
to
that,
regroup.
thank you.
Okay, yeah, regroup on that. We do have quite a bit to go through, so old business, we've been going through that comp plan review to kind of check off where we're at and, what we've done and what we haven't done. That was part of the comp plan, and I don't know where we're at, Joe, on that.
We've made it quite a ways through that, and what you found is that a lot of items in that we've made some progress on. But the reason I put it on this agenda, Kate, is so that I would recommend you schedule a workshop that's separate from the meetings. What we find is that when it's on the actual agenda, it ends up taking half the meeting, 3/4 of the meeting.
Okay,
So I would recommend scheduling a workshop where you just kind of focus on that.
sounds good.
Yeah, and you've made it, I don't know, maybe halfway through the items that are in there that pertain to this group.
So when we first, our list was broadband and infrastructure. Infrastructure was internet, cell phone, roads. We called it attainable housing because it was housing, but you couldn't rent. For instance, people didn't want to rent it to the employees or, the working families here, they wanted to rent it by week. Or they were, at that time, there was a whole bunch of people who had everything in the world was for sale. Remember, everything was for sale. They didn't want to rent it because they wanted to sell it and they didn't want it to be ruined. So it was like there was properties, but you just couldn't rent them. And we were trying to figure out how to help with that, even if it was just an information board saying, these are what's available to rent. Because every spring, there's always who's got any place, who knows of any place to rent? And then now it's really become workforce housing, attainable housing, affordable housing, all that is in the.
Hey, Kate.
Yeah.
Hi, it's Chris, obviously. And apologies for being late. I couldn't get in via the link. are there any developer obligations on the books, developer contributions for multi-unit developments?
Not on the books,
Developer,
not on the books, so to speak. There was a developer who came and talked to us, who was looking at a property on Cross Street. Now, Joe, I can let you give the nearest update on that, but they were looking at some of, what we had for TIF, that was interest to them. Also the zoning in that particular property, but he was highly interested in a parcel on Cross Street, I believe. But Joe, I'll let you go ahead.
Okay, he's still very interested. In fact, I responded to an email today from him, asking if we can follow up. So very interested. The scope of that project may, and I don't know the details, I don't know how much I can share, but it may have expanded a little bit to maybe some adjacent property that he's interested in also. But that is still something that he's interested in talking to the town about in terms of what he might do across.
One thing, in the process, this developer did a comprehensive survey of what the town kind of has and needs, right? Some of the needs assessment. And I think our next step was to actually have him meet, like set up a public meeting to kind of talk about some of those things. So once the town hears about a builder or developer in downtown, village, some people get nervous, especially the people who live on that street.
yeah.
And then the town as the taxpayers get nervous that, what are we doing? Are we giving them a break? So we just wanted to be really transparent upfront and with what they found and addressed in the survey and go through the process. But we had kind of gone cold.
Yeah, so what I'd suggest coming back to at a later time is, and I'm happy to draw up some examples of this, of developer obligations, is that when a developer wants to develop multiple units, is that there's a mandatory contribution for things like parks, water, attainable housing, and that kind of thing. And it's, with the growth right now, it's probably useful coming back to that.
Just
Oops, you still there?
Yeah, we're still here.
And just for the record,
Okay.
there are other parcels that this developer and I think other developers will be looking at in town. It's not just a strict focus on the Cross Street. That's just one that a certain developer has an option on at this point. But I like that input, Chris. The mandatory contribution input. I made a note of that. I like that.
Now, in the meantime, that's who was coming to the town. In the meantime, there's been private development that's happening. I don't know much about it, to be honest, but I've heard some people, some individual local business owners and builders are looking at different projects. So I don't know anything about that right now, but I think people are, realizing that this is such an important area and are working on it. And then, of course, Saddleback is working on their workforce housing, which will eliminate, because we rented up a lot of stuff, right, Chris, in the wintertime?
Yes.
It will, that will be a good thing to have them up there, and then it will be available for other people's, rentals, stuff like that for them to rent.
And that's what I don't think people realize, how much that will free up our downtown.
Yeah.
Because I realize that when we're giving the referrals out, we don't do long-term housing, but people call us for it.
Yeah,
So I think that will free up a lot of the apartments downtown.
I do too. And of course, the goal is,
Can I
right?
ask what the timeline on that is? I didn't just, what is the timeline on that side?
Chris, I think you said by winter of 2022-3, by November is looking like the project.
Yeah. So the timeline for that is we're already moving dirt around, but obviously have to wait for the weather to fully cooperate to get the foundation in. So if we can get the foundation in June, we should have seasonal workforce housing available by Thanksgiving.
Oh. Fast.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the plan, and I
Yeah.
feel pretty good about it right now. But we all know what things have been like with we've got the builders all lined up, we've got everything ready to go. Now that assumes that everything cooperates with us, meaning the supply chains.
And how many people is that going to house, Chris?
So is this Beth?
Yes, how are you?
Hi, sorry. All right. So the way it's configured right now are subject to modification are 35 rooms with a combination of single dorm rooms and ensuite dorm rooms, housing, depending on how people are willing or not willing to double up to, I'd say 100 people. That would take a lot of doubling up, which some seasonal workers may be happy to do.
Just so Chris, we have Beth. Can you see us?
No, unfortunately, I had to call in. The Zoom link didn't work.
Oh, okay. So Beth, Shelley, myself, and Joe are in the town office, and I'm seeing Laura on the screen. So Laura's zooming in, and you are on the call as well. And Daryl is not. No, okay.
Right.
Thank you.
And can I ask one more question about that? If you are not full during our summer season, will Saddleback be willing to rent those spaces to other seasonal workers for the businesses downtown?
Sure, that's a great question. And the way this is set up through by contract with Venn Foundation is that our first obligation is to house seasonal workers from Saddleback. Second, to house workers in town for all the other businesses. And third, and if the rooms are not taken up by seasonal workers in town or on the mountain, to through hikers and hostelry and that sort of thing, the rents can be no more than 30% of a seasonal worker's salary.
Is that based on that they do have a minimum work hour, like a 30-hour work week, or do you know?
Yeah, yes. So they do have to be working a full-time. It's based on their full-time income.
Okay.
So there won't be it'll seem obvious, but no one's going to make money on this. This is just to provide housing for Rangeley workers. This is only, I have to put in my plug, only possible thanks to philanthropy. Otherwise, the numbers just wouldn't work.
Thank you, Chris.
This is Laura. I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sure.
Sure. Is it just for, you keep saying seasonal workers? What if it's someone that,
Laura, you froze.
you hear me now?
Yep.
I'm asking if it has to be a seasonal worker or if they can be a full year-round worker.
So they can be a full-time year-round worker, and we anticipate that will happen. So, and that's actually part of the idea, is that someone could say be a waiter on the mountain working with Kate in the winter, and then move to, Tap House or Sarge's in the summer, and they could be year-round. Now, it's really nice dorm-style housing, but it's still dorm-style housing. So it seems possible, but unlikely that someone would stay there longer than 12 months.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
So in housing, there's like steps, right? There's the workforce housing, the dormitory. And then you get the people who you want to fall in love and stay, right? And hopefully we have enough work for them year round for them to stay. And then hopefully they'll be the starter house person, the attainable housing condo, which is where some of these more of the developers are looking at, some town things where they can go to the federal and state government and ask for some of that grant money to have help with that. Because right now with building costs, it's almost impossible to build a house and charge under 250 grand or something, right? So to make it so somebody could actually buy a house who was just starting out working. And yeah, so that was kind of like the step up thought process. And then of course we have the homes that are second homeowners and full-time, people where they can keep moving up the chain. It doesn't have to be in downtown Rangeley either. It's just, even though at first we were thinking a lot of the workforce type housing should be where they could walk, so you don't have to worry about them taking shuttles and buses or getting to work or having a car. But in Rangeley, most people have a car. They usually do, because of the distance just between almost everything, Right. Any other questions for Chris or anybody else on attainable housing? We had down economic action plan, Joe.
I don't have anything on that today. That's, we're waiting for a report from our consultant.
Okay. So on new business, you want to go through this?
Sure, I just wanted to let you know that I intend to send out a pre-application site inspection request to voting facilities fund, the Department of Conservation and Forestry, Agricultural and Conservation Forestry, for Haynes Landing and Fish Green Lodge. I'm still working through the scope on those, but that application is due this Friday. It's a pre-application. Basically, we have to do that. They have to come on site like they did in the town park 7 years ago, prior to us submitting an actual application. So if you're wondering why this is germane to you, it's part of the overall universe of projects that we've got going on. And this is one of those that I think we can get funding, hopefully, from this avenue if we act now. So,
Oh, we're talking about improving those facilities, those launches,
yeah, they don't
docks.
They don't need major overhauls, but the ramps, I think we need some more ramp sections at Haynes Landing. There's a little bit of prop wash there that might be able to fix some erosion control measures, maybe some other smaller stuff. I'm not looking at a complete total overhaul with these, just functionality grant upgrades. So I just wanted to let you know that that's my intent. There's no mass required at this point. This lets them know we're interested in looking at it. They'll come up and look at it with us, and then we'll, if we're interested, go ahead with a full-blown application, which would go, prior to doing that, I would go to the select board. So just really an FYI. And that's what the form looks like there on the screen, just so you know, it's one page. They look for the brief project narrative.
Also, speaking of water, I saw a huge beaver across the road from Haley Pond and heading on that side. I'm not kidding you. I've never seen one that big. I thought it was a porcupine.
We have a major issue down at like my house, in front of my house. Usually
Well, like I
beavers?
said, it's going back and forth, so I don't know if you want to keep an eye out on that to make sure that it doesn't
Yeah.
affect both ends of the
Have you
water.
seen anything strange there with the water levels recently?
I don't know.
Because it doesn't take them long, once they get.
Yeah, I just saw him like last Friday.
He
when I
might
was
want to
coming
walk
back.
over though. You should see what the beavers have done. It's bad. And we did call Bill Elliott last summer, fall, and I don't think there's like 2 of them. They're huge.
Can you
Oh,
do
yeah.
anything? You have
I think
to,
you can trap them, I think. I think Bill, I don't know.
so maybe the game wardens is the right person to call.
Yeah, I don't know. That's Jamie's part of, I'll ask. But yeah, town-wise, you might want to.
Yeah, like I said, it was just going from one body of water over to another, and I'm not sure where it's living. But
And her
I think it's
apparently
in my
down at the
house.
end of
Yeah, there's a lot of, it's a huge mess down there.
I've just never seen one right there, and it was, everyone's parked all at Sarge's, and the thing just waddled across the road in front of me. I'm like, holy crap.
Talking about projects, one of the things, is 16 posted? I thought it wasn't gonna be posted once the DOT did the Poland Springs work on 16 going to Stratton.
I think it's posted 10 or 11 miles out.
It is, it's posted past the redone, not the other road, so they're coming back through town right now. They can't go all the way around into Stratton and back through on 27.
So when Poland Springs worked with the main part of transportation, I thought they were upgrading 16 enough to be an unposted road.
On our end.
Wasn't there a phase 2? No phase 2?
I
Was I dreaming that? Laura, do you remember anything about that? Are you still?
I remember the first part, but I don't remember hearing of a second phase.
Okay, maybe I was dreaming. Okay. One of the things, Chris, the town of Rangeley has an industrial sector, and that industrial sector is up by the airport. And, and that road has been that's a posted road. And Route 4 is when we say posted road, and I assume you kind of might know what that means, where you can't run in the fall and in the spring when the thaw is happening and when it's freezing, because the road is too fragile, I guess, it will break it apart. So they can't run heavy trucks. So if we were looking at trying to have any kind of manufacturing or distribution arm up on the airport road and the industrial zone, they would have certain periods of time where they could not get product either in or out. And then Route 16 going towards Stratton, I know Poland Springs was looking at it with the state of Maine to upgrade. They did upgrade a big section close to Rangeley. But I thought they were looking at it so that they couldn't have that road not be posted either. Because the only access point in and out of Rangeley in those times of year when the roads are posted is Route 4. So 17 is posted, 16 is posted. So you can only go straight up and straight down. You can't get to New Hampshire or Canada.
Well, Loon Lake is gonna be, so that's not posted either.
Right.
But you have to have the final code on it first. It has to be finished. It's not finished yet.
So one of the DOT projects and part of the airport project was to make sure that that road would be in good enough shape that and fixed, that it wouldn't be a posted road. So at least that last piece of connectivity is done, which is a good thing. Right. Bylaw reviews. So Laura and I and Joe had a conversation a week ago or so, and we were talking about our bylaws and meeting with the selectmen and just making sure every year we kind of want to regroup and meet with the selectmen and know that we're on the same page as far as the projects and things that we're doing. Because a lot of times, unless if there's a conversation in a select board meeting, Lauren and I, or our committee might not even know about it. And it might pertain to the work we've been doing. And the selectmen might not have any idea that we've been doing work on it, right? So there's sometimes a disconnect between our organizations and we need to regroup. So we're gonna ask to have, we do have in our bylaws that once a year we'll be meeting, we should meet with the select board. And we're going to ask to do that here in the next month or so. But we also wanted to put in the bylaws, and Laura, you can correct me if I'm wrong or help me word this a little bit better, but something to pertain to if we could be alerted to the fact that there might be a topic in a select board meeting that's coming up that pertains to the work that we're doing, so that we know to come. Because unless you're looking every single time at the agendas, we have no idea. what the select board's making decisions
And
on.
sometimes we don't get our packets until Friday night or Saturday morning. And then our meeting's on Monday.
Yeah, Kate, I think we had a more specific request in that if there was any discussion or / decision about moving money out of the economic development reserves to use for something that we were involved in that decision-making process.
Yes, that one is an absolute, we would like to have that added into our bylaws if we could. Meaning, so every year when the reserve money is asked, we're asked what money we would like to have raised to put in our reserves. And then we present to the budget committee and the select board why we're asking for that money. And over the years, we did not ask for any money this year, but we've asked for money for signage, broadband, different project parking was a big one, some different things like that. We have a nice, but we've gotten grants, so we haven't really had to dip into it. We did have for the downtown, plan, we did use quite a bit of money on that. And we did use some money on parking, but we have some money set in reserve. And that money we're looking at as a potential to do matches for grants. And that's why we have it. Now, we've also gone to the plantations and asked for money. And in every plantation, except for Rangeley Plantation, we have the money. We thought we had the money in Rangeley, but they moved it to general fund apparently. Right? I think that was one of our conversations with them. And that way, if we want to extend our signage work and we need some money for in-kind work, we have the money budgeted in those plantations. So we would just like to be asked before it gets moved.
Does the same thing happen with the plantations as well as the town?
They haven't used any of our money, except for the Rangeley Plantation, who said that they just automatically moved it to general fund, which I don't think they were supposed to do. But.
Yeah, Rangeley Plantation has an agreement with me that they would discuss anytime they're using that money. And to be honest, I don't remember them telling me that it was put in a general fund, but maybe that I missed that.
I thought Liz said that when we were saying, do we still have $5 grand and we could go use that when we were trying to get the money for the lawyer, for the broadband
To do the
interlocal agreement, but I might have misunderstood.
Yeah, I don't remember that. And yeah, we did have the discussion and they were willing to get the money for it,
So reserves are like, the town asked for a fire truck. So they put money away in the reserves for 3 years to buy that fire truck, or 4 years. When it goes to moved out of reserve, it's supposed to go to buy the fire truck, right? So we just want to make sure that it's being used for the things that, we had set it aside for. So I don't know, what does that mean? So we need to put an adjustment in our bylaws to represent that.
Right, you could make an amendment. So what I'm hearing is periodically you should create a list of objectives for reserve funds, correct? Part 1 and then part 2
We
is.
already did that, though, in every presentation we've ever had. We've already represented when we go get the money in reserve.
No, I don't disagree.
Okay.
What I'm saying is kind of a 2-part thing. So create a list of objectives, and then a written list of objectives, and then share that with the select board as a recommendation, right? So that way that list is in the minutes of the select board. There's a record of it.
Well, there was a record of it because we went to the select board meetings to request the money and they approved it. In all the years that we went, and in the budget committee meetings, so there's records of all of those.
Right, I'm not arguing that. I'm saying going forward,
Okay.
how do we make it easy for this committee 5 years from now, the board 5 years from now, to know what it is we're talking about doing. So have a list of projects that match up to the reserve funds, and then make a reserve fund recommendation to the select board each year in January or something like that. We're trying to figure out how to word what it is.
Okay,
Okay,
I'm
so
gonna be
basically-
straightforward. I don't want to have a select board meeting where they say, we would like to take $20,000 out of the economic development reserve for sewer treatment. Or something else.
You can't.
I know, but that's,
But you
but they,
can't, I mean, so like.
we're not,
You can't take it out of certain things, like there's certain, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, the reserves are created for certain individual things. Like you can't pull money out of one reserve. The only time we've ever done that is to close the tower reserve. That's the only time, and there was no more tower. And that was the one that was, right on Route 4 by the old dump.
Okay.
Going towards Aquasic. And there was funds for that, or the clock. The clock is probably the best thing, where there's a town clock somewhere. I think it's at the Historical Society,
Parts of the Republic.
or it's part here. And so, and it was never fixed because there's no place for it to go. So, and the cost of it was a lot. So, I mean, that's the only time, like, we closed one account, was it the downtown?
So
The
the
funds that
down,
were left over in the downtown, we put them into, no, economic.
they were put together, right? Those two
They were
reserve
put
accounts by town meeting vote were blended together. That's where your $127,000 come from.
right, but I actually went to that meeting to request that they be moved together because that was the purpose
Right.
of them both. They were
Yeah.
both for that. So,
Yeah.
We're just.
And it's funds for
Decisions, or at
projects.
least they are advising, asking the committee that requested the money. Like you would go to the planning board and say, what does the planning board think? We're just asking that they go to the economic development, our committee, say, what do you think? That's all.
I think that's a reasonable thing. I'm just trying to figure out how to word it so that it goes in there.
Right.
And we all know what it means.
Because the airport, they don't have anything in their bylaws, right, that say about their projects, or it doesn't?
I don't remember offhand, but they specifically, I know in their bylaws, they specifically make recommendations to me.
Right.
And then because of the nature of my position, I obviously have to go to the board. It's a little more clear.
And that's where you come up with how much money to raise, to put in the reserves for each budget season.
Yeah, that's part of how that would happen, yes.
Right.
I think what we're talking about here, correct me if I'm wrong, Kate, we're talking about how to, before the select board makes a decision about expending reserve funds, this committee would like to have some input into how those are expended. Is that correct? Is that kind of where we're at?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, every time since we've started, every time that this committee has asked for the money, we've gone and presented to the select board and expressed ourselves. But there's been talk lately about using the reserve budget for consulting services and different things, right? So, and that, nobody asked our advice on that specific topic.
So you asked for the money for a specific reason,
Yes,
but they didn't.
we always go, I asked for $9,000 for the signs, for instance, right? When we did the downtown, when we did the Community Destination Academy, we asked from our reserve to have that money moved. When we did some of the parking design,
The trash cans.
the trash cans, I've asked for the money to be moved.
But when you raise it, I mean, so like when you raise it, you're asking for it. for
I'm
a
asking
specific
it
reason?
for it when budget season happens, and then I'm asking for it when we need to expend it out of reserve into actually purchase. Right, but there has been other times where the reserve has been used for some parking that they did not come to our committee, they just went straight, and I believe it was our consultant and our town manager at the time. And said, can we have some money for this? And it was moved. I might be incorrect, but I know there's specific ones now that brings us concern.
Like the signs aren't part of ours, although we have a selection and we can choose that, but that comes under culture.
The signs for the wayfinding signs, the $9,000 was from reserve budget.
I'm talking about the signs on the.
The banners originally were put in under our reserve budget and then got moved to the culture line on ongoing. But when we first started the project, it was for Christmas decorations and for the thing banners. And same with the trash cans, right? We started
Right.
in our group and then now it's moved to an operational budget. So we don't have to ask for money for that anymore, but. So, I don't know, Laura, I don't know what the wording is either, but how can we word it somehow, or is that?
What if it was just to make recommendations to the municipal officers regarding economic development, downtown revitalization reserve expenditures?
Well, we already do that, so that's not our concern, because we do it all the time, every time we have our concern is when it's being made without our advice. When the decisions are being made without having somebody from the Economic Development Committee aware of it, of how we're gonna use the reserves.
Do you want to think about it a little bit more and then ask that question of the select board when you meet with them? Or do you want to bring them a proposed, because they're going to have to review your bylaws, any amendments to your bylaws anyway. So you could have a dialogue with them to see what language they might like, or you could, and we can continue on this path and then make a recommendation to them. My recommendation is just to put something in there that says, you know, to review and make recommendations of current reserve account funds to the select board. And maybe you could put prior to expenditure by the select board, something like that.
Laura?
So are you saying there's nothing in any other committee's bylaws that they review any time that expenditures are taken out of their budget line?
I can't think of anything. So there's the operating budget, which you do have authority in here. It says under item B, for operations, you can obtain goods and services necessary for function within the limits of appropriation. So if you have a budget line item for operations, you know, you can spend that. But when we're talking about reserves, I think it's important to note, for maybe some folks are not aware, that reserve funds can only be expended by a majority vote of the select. That's the only way those funds can be expended. They're different than operational funds.
Right.
I know you know that, but I'm just making sure that everybody knows. That's why we're talking.
Why don't we just talk to them?
It's maybe an over. Yeah, I think it's something that maybe we can talk to when we have our annual meeting, that maybe it is just an understanding that that is done, but and maybe it's the way, maybe we don't have any control of it because of the way the government is set up. It seems like if the committee is making recommendations for what the money should be spent on, and then the Board of Selectmen has the ability just to override that and make any decision, kind of defeats the purpose of having a committee. If they don't first tell the committee what they're thinking and ask for our opinion on it.
All right, so why don't we talk it through when we do the select board meeting? What we're gonna do is ask for our annual review with the select board to be kind of in a, I don't know if it's a workshop format, Joe, prior to a select board meeting, like have it be where we can have these conversations. Because some of these projects, for instance, burying phone lines and going for, I mean, that's a $6-7 million budget thing, and it's not just that, it's also a Wausau, it's huge. If we're gonna be working on either small pieces of it or a big project, it would be really nice to know that the select board was on board and moving forward, because we could do a lot of work and spend a lot of time. And if everybody's opposed to it right from the get-go or not interested, then it's a waste of our time. So we're not trying to do that at all.
One of the things that came up with regards to burying the wires is Dennis was just happened to be at that meeting. And one of the things that he had a concern with is that every business owner is going to have a different setup. Like you have to figure out how to hook it into their businesses. So that was not going to be easy. And he just said that the expense of it is even more. And so how much do we do for the grant? I mean, because 9 out of 10, we're going after a grant to help assist this with anything we have. And keep in mind, anytime you go after state funds, the town has to put in 5%. So it's all gonna depend on
Yeah.
all of that. I mean,
So-
broadband took us forever. I mean,
Well,
that,
this is gonna take
it's gonna take a
while.
very long time.
too. But when Wright Pierce did their like assessments, when we had that conversation, they identified that as, we already knew that.
Mhm.
So the way that you hook up from your business, so we would have to offer some upgrade package to the business owners who are living in that stretch to say, this is gonna be an expense to you to do this, or this, you know, to now connect, and this is how we're gonna manage doing that, and it would have to be part of the grant. The other option was, potentially that maybe we don't have to actually bury the lines. We could move the telephone poles on the other sides of buildings. Now, there'd still be some connection stuff, it would be still work, but it would be a far less expensive proposition than burying all the lines. However, if we're redoing our sidewalks to be ADA compliant, it makes perfect sense to, when you're digging up the ground, that you're doing all the work you wanna be doing at that time. So if you're, you know, if burying lines or moving phone lines, it should all happen at the same time.
Can I interject right there?
Yeah.
I know I'm a little bit out of sequence, but I had put underground wires on here for a specific purpose. I had been to the select board with us, and I got permission to send a letter of intent to our congressional folks, which I did with Senator King's office. I had a conference call with staff, his staff. We talked about it, and they said what you really need is to talk to Susan Collins. She's a ranking member for appropriations. So I had a call with her office that afternoon, and then in the morning. So before that, I had a meeting in this room with a planner from DOT, some other folks, our engineer was here. Long story short, so I had authorization to send a letter of intent, have those conversations with those folks, and they said, you know, yeah, if you get your thing in time, we'll review it, your application, which was a very tight deadline. But in my meeting with DOT in this room, they did not discourage me from doing that, but it occurred to me, it dawned on me, and you made me think of this, Kate, of the extreme level of coordination that this is going to take. And I don't want there to be a competing interest when people in Washington see these applications to say, I don't want them to be confused. I want it to be kind of a unified approach to this so that we're on the same page with DOT. And I also don't want to ruffle any feathers higher up in the chain of DOT. Meaning, I don't want to say, oh, wow, I know about this earmark, that's what these are. You know, and I try to get my foot in the door, and then a year from now, 2 years from now, have to face them and say, okay, how can we coordinate on this? I would much rather coordinate with them now. That was my takeaway from that meeting a week or two ago. And I don't feel bad about, you know, asking for permission to send this letter, and it was not wasted time. They now are aware of what we're looking at and whether we're applying for it right now or not. And I also had those telephone conversations with those folks, so they know ready to discuss a project on the horizon. So that's why I wanted to bring underground and wires up. It's probably the biggest project I would ever do here. Most likely, it's a big project. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 million to do Quasic and Rangeley. So I just wanted to let you know, I haven't lost sight of that. I think that when we get into the planning partnership applications, which will probably be phased, I want that to be included in it, to your point, so that all of the efforts are coordinated. I don't want to be working against anybody. I want to be all in the same shoes. Because if they've got to tear up the sidewalk, that's the time to make it all right. So it's a huge project. The other thing I don't want to happen, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, Joe, just a really quick question because you're breaking up a little bit there. So you're trying to do this through an earmark, is that correct?
So, yeah, the board had given me authority to apply for earmark funds or congressionally directed spending requests, as they're known, which are back in style now. They went away for a while.
Yeah, they went away for about a decade or two.
Yeah, they authorized me to send a letter of intent, which I did. I had the conversation, but I am, at this point, having talked with DOT, I'm skittish about having competing interests and also not not doing the an adequate level of planning efforts on the front end of it. I don't want to go off half-cocked, I guess, and say, let's underground the wires, and then have to say, well, we've got to fix the sidewalk and all this other stuff. So that's all. That's really, I'm not giving up on the concept. I'm just saying,
No.
I need to slow down one a little bit.
No, because, I mean, from my perspective, having worked on similar things, there's probably at least 2 stages, if not more stages to this, one of which is an earmark for planning study,
Right.
Because you also have to
planning
see
and engineering.
water lines. That's the opportunity when they're digging up. Every time they dig up a road or something, you're looking at the water lines that you've got going through. You're looking at the sewer line, but then you've got the water lines. They have to connect with USDA to make sure they're financing and they're getting everything that they need. And then making sure the replacement for any sewer lines or something like that needs to be done. It's a lot.
All right, so I have a question, just in theory. Let's say we never go for money, ever. And we're never, what happens when things start crumbling apart? Like, let's say 10 years from now, the sidewalks are completely, I mean, you'd have to go fix. You just go do like piecemeal fixes along the way, or like the water.
I'm trying to think of when the last time it was dug up.
Main Street?
Yeah. I'm trying to think, I think IGA was down in town. Not up over the hill. I think it's been a while. Because remember, we used to have those big high curves that, yeah, you watch out, you get more than just the front end, but it was kind of like right all the way down Main Street.
I think it was the late 90s, maybe early 2000s. Somewhere I've seen plans.
Not since I've lived here, and I've lived here almost 21 years now, yeah.
So I didn't mean to jump ahead,
No,
but you were talking about that, so I wanted to interject also.
So this project was identified like the first downtown plan 15 years ago, the second downtown plan, which is
Oh, I think it's
3 years,
longer than
right?
that.
I mean, so it's obviously been on the thought and minds of people to do. It's been on this committee's mind to do. It's been part of why we wanted to go for blighted properties and stuff. We were looking at grants there to maybe help with some of these things. It's part of why we went to TIP, you know, to get some of this money in reserve was for this kind of big downtown improvement kind of plan. It is gonna be complicated. It's gonna take a lot of time and coordination, that's true.
Because then you have the
So
lighting.
what Chris is saying is a planning grant, I mean,
Right.
that is not.
Where are you gonna put the basketballs? That's all.
I mean, even broadband, if you guys remember, we had to get the planning grant that was from Franklin County. We tried to do it from Rangeley ourselves. And then we decided by working with Charlie that that was the better approach, was to go through with the whole Franklin County, because he had a better shot at getting the grant. And we didn't pay anything. We paid $400 or something
I
like
think
that.
more than that, 'cause, yeah.
No, well, not much more. I think it wasn't that, maybe it was.
Yeah, I can't remember. We had to do 2 payments towards it. I can't remember. Do you remember when Charlie was doing it where we had to pay him? I thought one time was $700 some odd dollars, and then the other time was
I don't-
200 to get in, and then plantations weren't paying. That was at the beginning.
So it should be exciting. It should be complicated. It should take, unfortunately, it's gonna take time, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you, did you want to wrap up the bylaws thing, and then I can get into the planning partnership initiative? If you had anything else on the bylaws you wanted to talk about today, or you just wanted to go to the board? Have notes. for you.
Laura? Anything else on the bylaws?
No, I think that's it.
All right. So the next, we talked about undergrounding wires, the planning partnership initiative, that's why I was talking with Maine DOT. They have a suite of initiatives, I guess they'll call them. Because of our valuation, we're right around 500 million. We're 50-50. So we pay 50%, they pay 50% of a planning grant. So that's what we're in the process of scoping right now, our engineer and me and Keith. We're talking about what are we doing in Aquasic. Kate talked about that early in the meeting. We're gonna delineate curbing, sidewalks, crosswalks, pedestrian, bike, all those other things, safety, parking. We've got a pretty good scope on that. Then we're thinking about the whole universe of the entire incorporated limits of range, Aquasic and also downtown Rangeley. Right now, I'm thinking Aquasic is phase 1, downtown Rangeley is phase 2. And I think there's actually some notes in here from Matt Ross. He's the new planner for Maine DOT. And you can see his narrative to me, in the morning, he was saying, you can approach it this way in the afternoon. He's also saying, or think about it this way. It's really up to us how we tackle this, which is kind of what I wanted to talk to you folks about. It's our planning initiative. Really, the state will help us with it. And this is a gateway, to Chris's point, to earmark spending, which is why I don't want to duplicate or complicate the effort. Essentially what DOT will do is they'll package this and they will bring it to Washington, on our behalf, essentially, and try to get the funding. So I guess my focus here is to make sure you are all aware of kind of what we're talking about administratively, at the staff level. Select board knows about this at a very high level. And I see us kind of working on drilling into this, coming in up with a recommendation to them so they know specifically what it is we're going to apply for. And we have a follow-up meeting, we being Jeff Preble, Daryl, Keith, and I, next Tuesday, I think, where we're going to get together and try to get this concentrated a little bit more. So a couple of schools of thought, we can focus on Aquasic and just focus on Aquasic, or we can focus on the entire universe at once, which is going to be a huge undertaking and take a long time to get written down and then get into the system. Or we can approach Aquasic as phase 1, kind of get that going, spend a year focused on that, and then focus on Rangeley as kind of phase 2. So hopefully I can get a written recommendation down in writing at some point in the next couple of weeks as to two or three options.
Sorry, I have a quick question. Kate, you've filled me in a little bit, and I apologize if you told me this already. Has there been any landscape architecture work done for the Aquasic do-over, or is that kind of what you're talking about right now?
It would be part of what we would be talking about right now. That would be part of the whole streetscape, basically a streetscape project and walking paths and all of that. There was a talk about interpretive signs and some things like that to walk through Aquasic, but we're also talking about purely like road structure right now with sidewalks and delineation of where the road is and where the driveways are and things like that. There's also no parking in Aquasic, so extending and looking at different parking capabilities for snowmobilers and all of our community events that we do. There's really no downtown parking. So
oh heck, there's a lot of parking in Aquasic. It's just taking up all the prime real estate. But you're talking about hiring a landscape architecture firm, right?
Yeah, well, so Wright Pierce has a landscape architect. Her name is Callie, I believe. She was in the last meeting. She's aware of kind of those elements of the project. I'm hoping, to answer your question, I'm hoping we can roll that into the partnership grant, and that we would be successful in doing that. So yes, we're looking at landscape architecture. There's a caveat to answer that question though. That's part 1. Part 2 is, and if you don't mind, Kate, I'm going to segue into it now, the scenic byway portion of this. So you have a scenic byway that committee is very interested in improving Depot Street and then the 4 and 16 parking lot, which are part of that overall universe that I'm talking about. They have a landscape architect, Larry Johannesson. I don't know if you've met him. He is a landscape architect. He's just got some ideas about what that could look like as part of a scenic byway accoutrement or element, I guess. I'm trying to think who else was involved.
Larry, by the way, he volunteered almost all of this. I mean, we didn't pay for Larry. to do those signs, the wayfinding signs.
Right.
He was very much involved and, knew exactly what we could and couldn't do and everything. So he's fabulous. He's a Rangeley lover and
Right.
helps us a lot. He also did, the scenic byway sign, I believe. Everything, he worked on that and part of the height of land stuff.
Yeah.
What's his last name?
Johannesman,
So Matt Drost, who's the planner, is the, I think he's the coordinator for the scenic byways. Now Larry works on it, he does a lot of landscape and grant work and stuff, but Matt is the person that's putting in an application, I believe, on behalf of all of the scenic byway locations in the state. He's putting them all together as one grant application, but he, and this is something that we talked to the select board about tonight, is interested in doing Depot Street and Route 4 and 16 improvements, and there's a partial list in here someplace of what that would look like. I think for the select board, I boiled it down more, but generally speaking, putting in some type of, I don't want to call it
Kiosk.
gazebo,
Yeah.
kiosk, gazebo at Depot Street, drainage improvements, whatever needs to be done there, and then kind of matching that at the 4 and 16 intersection so that they look the same and they
I
look
thought we
like.
were gonna do a whole railroad station.
That's not off the
station,
table.
Okay.
That's not off the table. I don't know
Depot
if-
Street.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll do it, but, it's not
Yeah.
off the table. So,
Like an introduction to chamber, I think that's what the email suggested.
Yeah.
Like having like 2 different things where you can get different things, information.
Yeah, no, it was
Yeah.
definitely a kiosk, but, one of the ideas was having it be like a railroad station facade type thing, like it looked like an old fashioned railroad
Oh.
station because it's called Depot Street. And the railroad, our history has the railroad coming into 4 and 16, so it kind of has like a dual meaning of,
Oh, yeah.
so that was the.
so that's kind of another prong of this approach, I guess, and it's a way that we can hopefully leverage what we have. Now, I don't know exactly, one of the questions I've asked Matt is, what's the match for this? And he's at this point saying, I don't think you need to worry about it because you have the land, you have, those facilities already, that could be your match. So this is kind of a letter of intent that I'm asking the board, if they're okay with Matt setting that in to this week. The deadline, I think, is the end of the week. For those improvements. Now, they're not too far off from what we've been talking about, because Larry's been part of these conversations, and there would be public input. This isn't the final application. I'm just really tonight asking them if they're okay, with them applying for
So
this.
would you like our, support?
Yes,
So, and the support would be phase 1, focus would be aquatic, and then we look at that, we take it in a phased approach and kind of focus in on.
as far as the scenic byways go, I don't know if they're gonna break those into phases. I think they're looking at Depot Street and.
Okay, so scenic byways, and then the
Yes.
other topic was
Right.
A
focused
separate
on,
item.
separate item, okay.
I'd love your support on both of them, actually, but tonight, the board will be considering Depot Street because that deadline is for a letter of intent, I think is the end of this week. I just wanted to let Matt know. But I am definitely interested in your support on that.
Now, are we flattening Depot Street out a little bit more so it connects, or are those trees still there? Like does this big square rectangle, and then you have these trees like coming around like this. And so are you thinking about clearing that and making it more of a straight stretch?
So do we own right from Route 4 and then
Yes.
into the parking area that, like you said, you can't, it's hard to see.
We own
Right.
both parking
And a lot of people
areas
don't like
too,
to
right?
park their
There's a-
cars there because you can't see. Your
So-
car's not really protected.
Yeah,
A couple of things, we do own, it's right around 2 acres, we don't own all the way to the woods in the back. There's a
No.
property line that's out 75, 80 feet. That's the first thing. Second question you had was about, kind of, channels in there. There's some type of drainage. And it may just be stormwater. You may be able to straighten that out, square it out. But that's an environmental question we have to ask before we went in and just,
The other thing
So
I
what-
would highly suggest is a little landscaping obviously with the project when you're doing the building, because it could start looking like a big open wasteland there, because that is now so open where, Mark just added on, it could look kind of, industrial looking or something. If it's not pretty.
Yeah, there's a list of items here. I won't read the whole thing, but regional and local site amenities, wayfinding info, traffic signs, safe access to the village center, this is Depot Street. Park and walk, downtown access, connection to and coordination of activities and elements with adjacent shared community workspace building, food truck court and picnic area. That's something that came up in this discussion. It's interesting.
I did want to tell you this because Keith mentioned that to me. The woman next door at the Rangeley Gathering Place, she's putting in 2 food truck plugins.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so, and because anyway, I don't want you to duplicate the efforts right next door.
Oh,
She's
okay.
doing that.
That's
I
cool.
think that's why that was in that. We knew, in our discussion of it, we knew that she was putting in food trucks.
Oh,
I don't think there was planned to have the ability to have food trucks in Depot Street.
Okay.
That would defeat the whole parking.
Right, and that's town land, and then for commercial, right, then you'd have to,
Yeah,
you'd
so
have
it
an
says-
issue, you'd have a conflict
okay, so
there.
yeah.
It says connection to and
Oh,
coordination of
yes.
activities.
Yeah.
Adjacent shared. But I didn't realize that either, that was.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I missed that either, so that's cool.
And the back lot, so we're still keeping it the same, right, where public car parking is in the front, and the
I
back
think you're
lot is-
jumping ahead a little bit. Part of just going, the letter, this letter of intent is to do the planning to come up with what we are gonna do with it.
Exactly.
Right,
Right.
I mean, we haven't made any of those decisions. That's the whole point of going to get some money to help us plan to get it figured out.
so I make a motion to support the scenic byway recommendation for Depot Street and 4 and 16 improvements to the select board.
Second.
Any discussion?
So what was it again? Your motion of support for the Depot Street
Rangeley Scenic Byway,
scenic byway.
improvement plan for Depot Street and Route 4 and Route 16 parking lot in Aquasic.
Good.
The 416 you're talking about, right, the Aquasic one?
Yeah, those two, Depot Street, Route 4 and 16.
That's exciting.
Well, remember a long time ago, when we had to build that new building, the
Yes,
kiosk, with the chamber?
Yes.
And then we were talking about duplicating it in
Yes.
Rangeley, so it's finally maybe a way to do it.
And it's a great spot. If people just kind of knew that's where they should,
Yeah,
it's close
so-
enough.
So we're a little over time.
Okay, give me a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. So Laura seconded.
Yes.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
I,
Shelley has to keep me in line. I'm
Chris says
terrible
aye.
about that.
Laura says aye.
All right.
I raised my hand.
I think it's the first time there's ever been 5 voting people in the room. since
I know.
That's awesome.
Sorry, guys.
No, it's
First
good,
time back.
it's good.
And then no other business, right?
No?
And are we gonna, I love the idea of the phase 1. Are we voting to support that too?
Yeah.
So Aquasic and-
Do you want us to vote for that?
Or do you want to present something to us in the next meeting and then?
Can I come back to you with
Yeah.
it? Because I would like you to support it, but I want to have a little more time with our engineer before I know whether it's going to be, phase 1 or the universe or phase, how we're going to do it. So
Okay.
I think we have enough time. I can bring it back to you at your next meeting.
So when things are, just in general, we've been meeting every other week, but we're gonna go to a monthly meeting. We feel that that's sufficient. However, when there's a project that's going on, sometimes we'll pair off and use subject matter experts, like for instance, Joe's using the DOT, he's doing a lot of the work, and then come back and meet with us. And if we do need to meet more than once a month, then that's easily, we can do that. But in general, we're gonna go to once a month right now. And we usually meet on Mondays. at 9 AM. Unless that's a horrible time, we can have a conversation about that, what works for everybody for their timing, but that's what we have been meeting. So our next meeting would be a month from now on Monday, and I can't see a calendar here,
The 16th of May?
which would be the 16th of May at 9 AM. Is there any objection right off the bat? Do people know? Yeah.
With the missions and with the goal of knowing what's happening at the select meeting, I would personally recommend that we have them the first Monday when the select meeting is gonna take place. So then if it's in the morning, we have plenty of time to get something for the evening meeting. Does that make sense?
Yes, so is the 16th not a selectmen's meeting date?
No, I think that is,
So we go to the next one?
I think the 16th is.
is the 16th the
Yeah,
one?
that's the third Monday in May.
Is it the third? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
The second is the first, and then the
Perfect.
16th.
We also do want to set up that meeting with a list, and I think we need to do a little behind the scenes, like an agenda for that meeting for the selectmen, to do that workshop, that once annual year workshop with them. So it might not be the 16th, the next one would be in June, which would be right before the budget. When's our vote date?
14th.
14th? So the 13th?
First meeting for the board is the 6th of June, and then the second is the 20th.
So on the next agenda, Joe, can you put down, right, make sure we have an agenda put together for the select board meeting on the first select board meeting in June?
On the 6th?
Yep.
Okay. You want to be on that agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, Laura, June 6th, do you have?
Sure.
Okay,
How long do you think that'll take? A half hour, an hour? How long do you want to leave?
45 minutes, let's split the difference.
45 minutes.
We didn't want to go to the select board meeting and have a,
From 5 to 6.
we wanted to have a conversation, so that's why I would like to do it as a workshop.
I think that's a good
We
idea.
get a little bit hangry, just tell you. Just kidding.
Should we bring food? So we're gonna bring food.
5 o'clock.
That was June 6th at 5, right?
Yeah.
I'll have to get approval, from the select board.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
So you need a recommendation? No, you don't need any.
I think it's unanimous.
Yeah.
I think that's the consensus. You can vote on it if you want.
No. I'm good.
You don't have to.
I might not, Emily graduates on the 11th, I might,
Oh, no,
that week will be crazy.
yeah. We'll keep you updated.
Thanks, Karen.
Okay. All right,
yeah.
so,
That's amazing.
do you want to ride? Join the meeting at 2:21.
That requires a vote.
So was that your motion?
That was my motion.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Chris,
Good.
you say aye?
Aye.
Hi,
Okay, 5-0.
All right, we'll see you in a month.
bye-bye.
Thank you.
See, this is why I can never be a selectman. I could never remember the rules.
Oh, I know.